This is the stuff dreams are made of. I'm writer-collector Ryan Condal.
And I'm writer-collector Dave Mandel, and you're listening to the original movie prop collecting podcast brought to you by Heritage Auctions, HA.com. They've got the big Guillermo del Toro, The Terrors of Bleak House, we're calling it, coming up September 26th. And a whole bunch more coming your way. You can check on our social media right now and our YouTube channel. I have some highlights that we put up from Comic-Con, some of the Guillermo del Toro, a couple pieces they had there. So you get a first sneak peek. So please check that out and stay tuned for more information on that. And with any luck, we'll actually get to talk to the man. So that will be very exciting. For those of you watching on YouTube, I apologize in advance. My dog has been diarrheaing like all night and morning, and I am so like just frazzled and just like my like unshowered, unkept, and just like just this poor Hooper. Just
poor Hooper.
Yeah.
Poor you though, really.
God bless him though. He makes a noise, and if I hear that, like he kind of has like a little whiny noise, and the second I hear that, I kind of know time to get him outside. Like he's not God bless him, he's not trying to poop in the house, but my Lord, I feel bad for him. Yeah. So we're up to the point now of trying. I gave him a probiotic. And we may be moving on to some cottage cheese next, which I'm told is good. But it has been
a binding agent.
Yeah, I am not at the top of my game, and I will preface everything with that.
Sorry.
So I apologize. Yeah,
sorry.
He is okay. He is going to be fine. It is just one of those things. And I'm home alone. I'm everybody's away right now, so I have him to myself.
How convenient for them.
Yes, exactly. Almost as if they knew it. Anyway. Anyway, that's what's going on. So hi. What's new in props, Ryan? How are you? What's new in props?
Very simply, it's 10 to 11 tonight, and I'm working on early calls, and I am also not at my best. Although thankfully there is no diarrhea in my house that I know of
yet.
Well, we have a wonderful guest tonight, which we'll get to in a minute. So, and we had a nice long discussion with him. So we do want to get right into that because it is a good, juicy, meaty one that all the creature nerds I think will really enjoy. But we had this is going back now a couple weeks, a prior topic of ours, and we had Mr. Dan Lanigan on to talk about Cinema Relics Investigates, his new YouTube series, his video series, web series.
Phenomenon. His YouTube phenomenon. Yep.
And Dan sort of previewed an episode with us that was just the most recent thing that they were releasing, so it's the thing that we talked about. Well, it's caused quite a stir and quite a storm here in the movie prop community. If you guys hadn't heard it, it's worth going back and listening. It's worth going and seeing Dan's many videos now on Cinema Relics Investigates on YouTube, but particularly his investigation of the fake Stormbreaker that he bought and then tried to return to the person that sold it to him. And the return did not go well. It did not work out. Dan does end up with a very nice, real, presumably the only real one in private hands at the end.
Yeah,
so it is
from
kind of
a charity auction that Marvel placed it into.
With a Marvel letter.
Yeah, provenance and all of that kind of stuff. So it worked out ultimately relatively well for Dan, but obviously his speaking about it, I guess, on the Cinema Relics Investigations has caused, I guess, some of the various the parties who I think did the aggrieving feel aggrieved that they've been, as always, that they have been called out on their bad behavior. And it's been really funny.
It's a very modern, sort of postmodern, post-democratic America reaction.
Yes.
To an accusation, which is how dare you accuse me? And then there was some sort of kind of confessing to things.
Right. It's how dare you accuse me, but also you're just an idiot. I'm smart for thinking of selling you a fake. It's all very Trumpy. I'm really smart for committing this crime, and then almost sort of bragging about it of like, of course I sell stolen stuff. Yeah. So very, very funny in the sort of...
You're damn right I ordered the code red.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I called it. I called it "Stupid A Few Good Men" is what that whole experience was. It's kind of amazing. You should go online, check it out. But it is nice, somebody at some point, and there was this line that I was told. It was a story I was being told from within the halls of a movie studio, and there was some skullduggery going on between, I think, people kind of jockeying for political position, and a certain email was forwarded to the entire company, and the person who forwarded the email simply said, "Sunshine kills mold," and I always like that. So if anything, if the Stuffed Dreams Are Made Of can provide one service, I think, to our collecting community, I think it would be blowing some sunshine up into this moldy place, and very proud to be a small part of doing that. But keep at it, and it's nice to just see people and things being called to account that aren't exactly towing their line of the moral code, the moral fabric of society.
And just back to our favorite. Do your research. Do your research. There's a reason if something is quote unquote selling an auction for hundreds of thousands of dollars and someone is offering you one for $30,000, that don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And It also doesn't make sense that there are so many of them, and why are they all the same? And there's a lot of just things that just use your fucking brain and think about what you're being offered and do some work. There are certainly, if you can't do it, there are people that are willing to help you. But if something looks too good to be true, boy, oh boy, it often is. I don't know, just
age-old saga.
Yeah. It reminded
me
there was there was this fascinating article that I shared with Ryan, and we can see if we can put a link up. It comes from
Airmail.
Airmail, which is Graydon Carter's follow-up to having left Vanity Fair and whatnot. This is his sort of his online-only sort of newsletter with articles and whatnot. I really quite like it. There was this fascinating article about an art collector that meets a guy in Greece, and the guy has this insane collection of modern art that's just wild. Van Goghs and all this, just like this incredible collection.
Cezanne.
Yes, just wild. Except when you turn it all over, what he's showing, what this guy shows him, and he's like, I don't know, what can you do here? It's all basically got either like SS marks from Germany, or in some cases it says it's like from the collection of like
of Hermann Göring.
Of Hermann Göring, who had an exquisite eye. So it's basically all of this like looted Nazi stuff. And the guy, as a collector, kind of goes down a very normal path, which is there's two versions of this, which is to say, when you have this German stuff, was it taken from Jews against their will? But also, they often looted the Austrian museums, meaning it wasn't necessarily owned by, Jewish families. And in those cases, I think those pieces are, I guess, in theory, more up for grabs. But as the guy digs in and investigates, he eventually discovers it's all fakes, that they've faked the painting, and then they faked the SS and the Nazi attribution. And then that begets a second story about a very similar thing with this sort of Nazi thing. And it's a fascinating thing because what you sort of realize, they don't quite come out and say this, they talk about the people who are sort of luridly interested. But the honest answer is it's very clear that the hope was that because it was connected to Nazis, that if you bought a piece, you would buy a piece and keep your mouth shut. You would buy a piece and you wouldn't do the research. And that the Nazi sort of markings on it allowed you to believe who would fake, like you'd never think to yourself somebody would fake Nazi stuff, that this has to be real because it's got these Nazi marks on it. Why would you do that?
Exactly.
And of course it's all this and again, we don't know where it came from. They don't know what the origins are, but it raised just so many wonderfully horrific points about dealing with fakes.
And fakers and forgers and collectors.
And how they think, and how they, not only how they think, but how they think we think, which is always a little bit of the game.
Right.
which is the problem.
And this is the thing that we've been talking about a lot too with props, is like those little details that are just like you wouldn't forge that. You wouldn't forge that detail. And I think, we talked about the Grail Cup with the little ball bearing in it. Like you fake that detail. And now we're seeing in the art community where obviously if you can pull off a forgery, the rewards are many hundreds of X.
Although
better
again,
than,
not something that probably isn't going to go into. Obviously, you can't put this into an auction. So again,
right.
hashtag private deal. I'm going to buy this.
It's an implied
whatever.
sign.
I'm going to buy this Van Gogh
Right.
drawing with it, like an SS mark on the back. I'm sure once again, regular Van Gogh drawing, $100 million. This is a bargain. Why is it a bargain? And of course, they're answering you the question because it has Nazi markings, but that's not why. Because it's a fake. Anyway,
right.
Just very fascinating.
Which explains why when Dave sold me his fake Wrath of Khan phaser, that it said from the collection of Dr. Joseph Mengele.
Loved Star Trek. Loved Star Trek.
He was really, particularly Wrath of Khan. It was about superhumans, and
I think he was more of a
eugenics.
next gen guy. But anyway, yeah.
No, Mengele likes Voyager. Come on.
Nobody likes Enterprise. None of the Nazis liked Enterprise. But anyway, I did. Anyway, it just was a very fascinating thing. And look, I think we're seeing it in all fields of collecting where there is money. And unfortunately, there is money in this world that we're in right now. And I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better. But anyway, just check it out. I think it's a fascinating article. And I highly recommend Airmail as well. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm actually not a subscriber because I've been trying to be more responsible about my uber number of subscriptions, but every time you send me something from there, I'm like, oh, this is great. I should really sign up. It's all kind of right up my street, the things that you send from over there.
It reminds me of those great times with his magazine at Vanity Fair where you would, just every issue always had something that you kind of liked. To
chew into. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of chewing,
speaking of Graydon Carter, no, not even close. Yeah.
We have we've been wanting.
Speaking of Nazis, speaking of Hermann Goring, speaking of diarrhea, any of these helping or working? No, not really.
Not really doing it.
Yeah.
But we've been trying to do more of these deep dives in here and trying to expand out from the realm of Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and we were talking to a friend of the podcast, Tom Spina, and he was saying like I'd love to come back on. I don't really have anything to plug, but really enjoys doing the podcast. We enjoy having him on. He's so deeply knowledgeable. Well, we sort of said to him like, what would you like to talk about? And he pitched talking about Gremlins, and we both loved the idea. It was something it's near and dear to the heart, I think, of a lot of the listeners of the podcast. He as you will hear, knows a ton about Gremlins, has handled more Gremlins than probably anybody but Rick Baker himself has handled in his time as a restorer and a conserver. And yeah, just it was a fascinating topic. So we're gonna bring on Mr. Tom Spina and talk Gremlins tonight.
And diarrhea.
Of course. So as promised, joining us tonight is the Master Chief. What we call you? The founder, CEO of
Founder works, sure.
the
King.
eponymous Tom Spina of Tom Spina Designs, and
Titular.
the head robot of Regal Robot.
That's correct.
What is your Regal Robot title, or is that one and the same as?
We just kind of go founder, like that works.
Okay.
That's pretentious enough. Like I don't want to go.
The founder.
I don't want to push it too far.
Like Ron Severance.
We had a joke that we wrote into a lot of scripts, and it never made any of them. Which would be, you'd have a company like Tom Spina Designs, and it would be, and the joke was going to be, do you know who that is? He's the guy that founded Tom Spina Designs. That's Steve Designs.
That's right. It's like, listen, Mr. Designs is my father, okay? You guys call me Steve.
Nobody ever laughed, and that never made any movie it was ever put into. I appreciate that, but you were not executives at Universal circa 1998. Yeah.
I'm a guest on a very important podcast, so it's not the same thing, I guess. But it's always nice to see you guys. I feel like I gosh, I don't think Ryan and I have been in the same room in an extremely long time. Dave, at least, every once in a while we're in the same place.
Yes,
but,
you occasionally come to California, etc.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I grace you, yes, of course. But no, I miss hanging out with you guys. I think in a very recent episode, Ryan, you were talking about the debut of Dan's space. Were
you in Chicago for that as well?
I was there.
You were there?
Because we had just done like 10 days in his basement, doing mannequins and displays and prepping things and taking apart the walls that were made by this theming company so we could put more sturdy beams and things behind it so that we could hold all the heavy props on the walls, and made all these custom mounts. It was incredible. But like after that, I just remember everybody kind of flew in, and it was this big party, and we were just destroyed. There was like 5 of us that were like barely functioning.
You had worked. Yeah.
Everybody else had like flown in, and they were all talking props, and I'm just like,
I do remember that. I remember the story of like, there was something that like didn't fit through the door, so you guys had finished the door, and then you had to like re-smash the door open.
Oh, okay.
You had to like demo the new door frame, I guess, right? Yeah. You took the door off the hinge, had to demo the door frame, and then move the thing in, and then
So Ryan, you are a podcasting genius. That item was the full-sized spider gremlin from Gremlins 2.
Yes.
It's all right. I mean, synergy. It's
Look
all
at
right
that.
here.
Look at that.
Just teed it up. 15 years in the making, that segue.
They had built... so Brian Penicus, who's an animatronics and prop specialist. Actually, his brother does more of the animatronics.
And makeup guy, right? Because
makeup guy, apes guy. Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I knew him. So, my association of him was to apes because you and
the animatronics thing, I am thinking more of his brother. But he also
did my ape display, which is really incredible. Especially
Ape Mania was his place for the longest time.
When you see the ones he didn't do, the ones that pop up over the years. God, his was so good. Is good. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and I believe he's still doing it. But he had done the basic rebuild on this thing after production because he did work on the film, and Dan had it, and it was on a very large base. That's how it came to him, on this big laminate base, and it was in 2 pieces, the base, and that door is huge at Dan's. But someone didn't fully measure that ahead of time. And so we're going, and we had there was a lift that you needed to use, with a winch, and we were lowering this thing down from the ceiling. We get it into that area, and it's not going to make it through the door. So now we had to raise it back up and get it out of the way, and again, this is on, of course, the 8th or 9th day of and the eve of the party. And so we're there with a Sawzall cutting a notch out of the door frame that is just the size of the base, so that the edge of the base can slide its way through. I mean, it's probably 10 years later. I think Dan parted with that piece, and it was like, hey, you got some guys that can come help move this out? And it's like, oh no.
Oh, they had to basically cut the notch again, basically, to get it out?
Yeah. But I have an idea of where it ended up, and I've always been curious if that person was surprised by the size of that thing, because that was a genuinely massive puppet.
The Spider Gremlin was from, obviously, the new batch. That's where all the variations appear. Yes, Gremlins 2. Of which I guess now there's talk of another Gremlins movie. All of a sudden they're talking about a third one again.
Heard.
Who knows?
Yeah.
All digital, of course. But let us take it back all the way as we attempt this Gremlin deep dive. So let's talk a little bit about the first movie, Joe Dante's Gremlins. We don't have, I guess one of the big differences are, obviously there are many, many versions of them, but there are not that many characters, which is a good thing in the movie as things go. You have Mowgli, and then, or whatever his name is, Mogwai, or what's his name, or
Gizmo.
Gizmo.
Yeah. Mowgli's in there too.
We're
just
deeply
hanging out.
passionate about Joe Dante's Gremlins here on the Stuff Dreams Are Made Of.
I haven't
and
seen
we
it in a
couldn't wait
million years.
We
I
couldn't
haven't
wait to
seen
do
it.
this deep
Yeah.
dive.
I haven't seen it in a million
In the
years.
Gremlins
Mowgli.
film, there's it takes place during Halloween, and it's what's interesting. There are still a handful of there's like great moments with some individual ones. There's like the Flasher and the Bandit guy, and I think the guy in the ceiling fan. There's all kinds of fun stuff like that. And I know some of those were ultimately identified. I am going to give a shout out to someone who's a client of ours and also just a great resource for this site. For this stuff, he's got a site. He literally has gremlins.com as his website.
Oh, wow.
And he's
Gone
Gremlins
on that early.
Museum. His name is Ian Grant. He has become sort of like the gremlin collector out there. And he did give me the okay to name him and share his stuff. His site
His
has
name
a lot
is
of behind the
Ian
scenes stuff.
Gremlins, Dave. He was
Ian Gremlins is his name. Yes,
that's why he did Gremlins.com.
And,
you see, I was going back to your
the founder of
joke
the
from the
site
beginning.
was Steve Gremlins. Yes, and
He's
But
Bill.
it's-
His name is Bill.com. Go on.
that's right. Yeah, sorry. I'm just the guest. I'll leave the writing. Yeah, but he's really collected a lot of the kind of key pieces these days. He's done a lot of research into the history of all these things, and we've done an absolute ton of work, obviously, with him helping preserve all of this stuff over the years. But yeah, it's funny, like some of the first Gremlins pieces I worked on were from the second film. There was so much more made for the second film. There's a surprising amount made for the first film. But the second film, I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of puppets. There's that famous shot. Have you guys ever seen the pic they did from the up top of Rick's studio where they're looking down and you just see this sea of puppets of like all the different characters, and you just, somebody set it up to be like, okay, this is everything we worked on. And I was talking to someone recently, and they were
We're
like,
going to cut it in right here. Here we go.
"Oh, okay, there you go."
Podcasting magic. Right there. There you go.
Oh yeah, there it is. Well, the funny thing is, somebody who had worked on getting that all set up was like, "Yeah, we probably had like 7 each of the different types of background gremlins and all these other puppets that didn't even make it. Just hundreds of other gremlins."
Wow.
So
okay.
the sheer volume of what was made for the second movie is intense. But in the first film, but one of the first Gremlins I ever got to work on, very luckily, was a first movie Gremlin puppet. It was a waist-up puppet. It was one that had a fixed closed mouth. So, I would assume a relatively background character, not a superhero with all the mechanisms, or not a basic hand puppet. This was, probably one made for someone to have like, 2 going at once, or, sometimes you had even the helmet mounted gremlins. That was a thing on both films where they would have people who would be puppeteering 2 at once, and then on the helmet would be a third one, so you could just get all of this activity out of one puppeteer, which is economical filmmaking. Good job, Joe Dante.
Have any of those helmet ones still attached to the helmet ever shown themselves in auction?
Yes,
or
they
whatever?
have.
Oh, they have. Oh, very cool.
Yeah, if you go to tomspinadesigns.com, if you don't mind a plug, if you search Helmet Gremlin, we have one from the second film on there, and we've seen a couple of those over the years. But there is something about the first movie sculpt, the Chris Walas design.
Right, because we should say that
let's.
There was a different what do you call it, designer sculptor
creature
on
crew
on
for each
Gremlins 1 versus Gremlins 2, and Gremlins 2, it's very well known, it was Rick Baker, hence I think it's the classic sequel thing. There were more made, there was a higher budget, all
more
that.
Characters,
they're
more
out there.
refined,
But
more
I also
activity.
think specifically because of the Rick Baker shop origin, more of them were sort of in one place and then got out because when Rick
Rick
de-ascensioned
had his
big
auction.
collection.
Yeah, he had a lot of those.
Yeah, and that was
Anyway,
something
so-
we actually, he brought us in to help with that auction and prepare a lot of these, and a lot of Gremlins, we're in that, and we, had a hand in very luckily had a hand in getting those ready for auction, which was cool.
Just sort of simple restoration on a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah, in that case,
Yeah.
in some cases it's almost conservation, where you are repairing things that would otherwise, get worse over time, tears, supporting things, making sure gravity's not yanking on something too bad, or doing, basic cosmetic stuff where it's like, okay, let's, it's like polishing your car before you go to put it up for sale, that kind of thing. First film, Chris Walas. Who's, known for Gremlins, for Enemy Mine, for The Fly. He directed the sequel to The Fly. And he has a really unique vision when it comes to designing creatures. And the look of the Gremlins in particular, Mogwais as well, but the Gremlins really scream Chris Walas to me. The type of brow, if you ever really look at that sculpt, it's very segmented. It's a really unique approach to creature design, and the brows are very deep set and very segmented from the rest of the head. The smile is big and evil. The forehead is almost non-existent. It's down below the level of the brows that are really heavily arched, and they read so quickly as an evil little monster, and it's like, that's your best kind of creature, is when you can, you see it on screen for a second and you immediately know, like, oh, okay, I know exactly what that thing's about.
Now, did Walas, he did the sculpt, obviously, but he also design like what the gremlin was and what the Mogwai was? Was that being done by like a conceptual designer, then the Walas takes over and has to figure out how to make it into reality? How did it all work?
My understanding is Chris did the designs, and Chris did an initial sculpt, but Tony McVeigh was brought in to do the final puppet sculpt. And if you look at Chris's sculpt versus Tony's is very, very faithful to Chris's design. It's just a little amplified in terms of detail, which is a very Tony McVeigh thing. Tony is someone who is a prolific sculptor. He worked on Return of the Jedi. He made Salacious Crumb. He's did all sorts of concept work for the prequels years later. We've been lucky to work with him at Regal Robot a bunch of times, and he's incredibly talented guy. He's still got a studio where he works in his spare time making cool monsters and dinosaurs and stuff, and like, to go there as a sculptor myself, it's just like Wonderland. You just walk through and you look at some of the stuff he's got going, and you're just like, you shake your head. It's like when it's like when you're a musician and someone plays something amazing and you just kind of throw your hands up. You're like, there it is. That's beauty. But so Tony did the main sculpt for the main gremlin for the puppets for the first film. From there, they were molded and they were cast in different ways. Some of them were in polyfoam. Some of them are slip latex with foam underneath. Some of them were foam latex that would maybe be doing more specific actions and things like that. They had different levels of mechanics in some of them. There were some that were weighted different. Some they had a set of what they called super arms, which were like crazy animated cable controlled arms. There was a super head, if I'm using the right terminology, that had the most facial expressions possible with the mechanics they had, and even had things like the third lid, like you see like a cat lid where it comes over that kind of clear, I think they call it a nictitating lens. So we actually had that super head here.
That was like an extra large head, right? That they used. No.
That one was still regular size.
Oh, but was it later on in the second movie that they made some giant heads for close-ups and stuff? Okay.
Yes, in particular on the Mogwai.
Gotcha.
And we worked on a giant Daffy and a giant Gizmo with the Rambo.
I remember the Rambo Gizmo
thing on his head and everything. Yeah. And if you don't mind jumping around, I mean, those two oversized Mogwai. So a normal Mogwai is like, less than 12 inches tall, right? Like 10 inches, something like that. Really small, really limited on what you can get in there. And in fact, on both films, they used swap out faces so that they could have different expressions and the mechanics wouldn't have to go as far. You know, so it's
Yeah.
like if you have a face that's already starting scared, now the mechanics only have to go a little bit to give him some motion versus having to start neutral and make him go scared. So you look at some of the behind the scenes photos and you can see tables of different gizmo faces, and there's maybe 7 or 8 different expressions. Pardon me, when Rick retired, there were these little boxes, and they were like these little kind of craft boxes where you would open them up and each one would have a different face in it for a Mogwai. And there was like, you know, Gizmo scared, Gizmo curious, Gizmo screaming, Gizmo happy, you know, all these sort of different faces. And they had little Velcro tabs and vac form insert, and you'd peel one off, put one on, and then, you know, all of a sudden you have another starting point. But the big oversized ones were rigged up fully mechanical, and so they could go from neutral to scared to, you know, wide open eyes, moving eyes, all kinds of stuff that you could not jam into a tiny place at the time. A really neat thing with those was the first one that came in for us was Daffy. And this was actually, this has got to be 17, 18 years ago when I was still working out of the house. And I had a home studio in the house, and I had the garage taken over. It came in a giant crate. I'm like, this is a Mogwai? And once I unpack it, I'm looking and I'm working on it, and I'm moving the body around, and I look, and out the bottom of the body are these little brown bits and stuff like that. And then some other little things too, little gray things. And I'm like, what am I looking at here? And not to gross anyone out, I was looking at mouse droppings and sunflower seed shells. So what they did was to make the belly have some movement and not just be stuffed like a stuffed animal. They filled it with pouches of sunflower seeds to give it kind of weight and mass and movement. And then they left it that way, and they left it in, you know, Rick's studio basement for 20, 30 years. And some friends found their way in, ate all the sunflower seeds, pooped, and left. So part of my job on that restoration is glamorous work, folks.
Yes,
Part of my restoration work on that was going through and, you know, pulling out all of the sunflower seeds, any remains from what the mice left behind,
and not getting the hantavirus. When you pull out those seeds, what do you replace them with so that you can have the same look and feel without obviously further critter visits, if you will?
Yeah. So we've done two things, Dave. In the past.
Do you go archival and true to history with new sunflower seeds, or
or pistachio nuts, for example? What about pistachio nuts, or maybe popcorn?
See, now that's thinking outside the box. No, so we've done two things in those situations. Where the customer is more concerned about the feel, we'll do something like plastic BBs, like you would use for an airsoft gun, and you still get the weight of it and stuff there. But that can also get a little heavy. So other times we'll do just an archival polyester batting. And, you know, sort of like a pillow stuffing, but not the kind that's really springy, because you don't want to put a lot of pressure on things.
Right.
And so we'll shred up batting, put it in there, get the same amount of fulfillment and the same, you know, sort of overall shape and get the right look, but no added weight, no pressure on anything, and best of all, no critters.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like we could do a whole podcast, Dave, on restoration stories that begin with removing some kind of rodent skeleton or rodent droppings from the piece that's being restored.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Said the guy that removes things from props.
The guys, you know, when you meet these guys who like are basically like, oh yeah, no, it's been in my garage for 30 years. Invariably, that box opens and there is like mice remnants, or, you know, some version of that, whether or not there were sunflower seeds or not.
Right.
Like, it's just sort of like, oh, this seems like a great place to nest, whatever this thing that...
For whatever reason, you know, foam latex is delicious to rats, we've learned over the years.
Oh,
there have been more than a handful of pieces have come through to us with, you know, like literal rat bite damage on the foam.
That's why I collect, like, plastic things, blasters, stormtrooper helmets.
Or just don't leave it in your garage. You know, like, so if you're, there's your tip for today, folks. You know, like, for both films, they, there's a few sort of techniques that carried over into both. The helmet gremlins were used in both. Marionettes of different types were used in both, where sometimes you're puppeteering from underneath and sometimes from above. The marionettes are actually a real unique challenge when you're talking about, and I'll also, I would put in the same category as marionettes, and this extends past Gremlins, but something we'd call a toss dummy, where you have kind of like when Kermit gets thrown across the room in the Muppets. Sometimes you can tell they just stuffed the sleeve up inside of him and threw it, but other times it's like, he's moving better or whatever, and it's like sometimes there are literal weighted toss dummies made of creatures and things like that, or ones to be carried like a carry dummy. And what they tend to do on those is have completely loose joints. Usually it's just bits of rope or something like that, instead of the mechanical arms, and weights in the hands, weights in the feet, weights in the butt, and things like that, so that when it's moving, everything feels like it's got some mass to it, and it's not just a stuffed animal. And the challenge that comes in is, we're dealing with materials that over time get super brittle, and so a lot of times our first job on a gremlin is locking things in place, because if you're dealing with one of these where there's and there have been times we have found like fishing weights in these things. We've found all kinds of lead pieces and whatever else, because they're just doing what they can to give this thing the right movement. But we'll get it and we'll be like, the first thing you want to do is stop this from moving, because every time it moves, you're going to break that elbow again, or you're going to break that shoulder again, or whatever. So
you're talking about the brittleness inherent in
the foam skin.
Gotcha. The skin is the key part. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
There was someone on your podcast that asked something about getting the mechanics of a gremlin working again last time. I don't know who it was, but it was
we'll find that out.
It was enough that I think I heard Christine faint and fall out of her chair when she was listening to the podcast. But yeah, generally speaking, when you're dealing with a foam latex prop, over time that foam is going to become more brittle. And if you try to use the mechanics, basically what you can tend to do is either snap it at the joints or turn things to dust or whatever. But she did point out to me a really nice exception with some of the Gremlins 2 Gremlins. A number of them had movable eyes with where the eye could look left and right and the lid could close. And I don't know who developed this particular mech at Rick's shop, but it's a genius little mechanism with just, I think, 3 cables and a little spring-loaded thing. It's like a little pistol grip, and on the thumb is a little cup. And what you can do is move your thumb back and forth, and as you do that, very intuitively, the eyes move back and forth. And then there's a trigger that's spring-loaded, and when you pull the trigger, the eyes close. And the cool thing is, the Gremlins that had that mech had resin eyelids and resin eyes. And the eyelids were not attached to the foam around it. So on the Gremlins that we've restored that had that mechanism, we're able to tell the customers, and we'll put big warning labels on all the other mechanisms.
Right.
Don't touch.
Don't press anything. Don't move the arms, because obviously you'll tear the elbows apart or whatever.
We'll lock those in place. We make mounts for them.
The eyes can move will continue to move. That's nice.
Yeah, and it really is fun. It's such a great little mechanism. Like it's one of those like really satisfying things, because for so long you're like, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it, and then it's like, ooh, I mean, to see a gremlin doing like the little smile and the shifty eyes.
Just to reiterate, that's a second movie though. Basically, that's a
Correct.
second movie development.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, just in terms of the overall brittleness. So would a Gizmo, because he's furrier and only has, I guess, his hands and maybe the palms of his, or whatever, the balls of his feet are flesh or latex or whatever,
latex,
and then obviously the faceplate. Would it have the gizmos, I guess, done better in the long run?
Yeah, and it's funny, we've had...
From the original movie, I guess, going back to the original film?
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky to have gizmos and other Mogwai, obviously, from from both movies. And it's funny. So we've had only there's about 20 people here on a regular day. They are very used to having original movie props around, and I don't want to say that it's a jaded bunch because they're all still, so into all this stuff. I try not to get jaded myself. It's really easy. Look, we're all around this stuff all the time. It is a little like a drug where it's like you have to up the level each time to get the same amount of high. But when we had a first movie, Chris Wayless gizmo here, and for whatever reason, that thing resonated with everybody on the crew. And when Christine unpacked it and had it on the prep table before we did the check-in photos, everybody who walked by was like, what? And then like one by one, I'm seeing people come in from next door that are normally doing like production of Regal stuff. Like, I heard there was a gizmo, it's like, so, there's magic in those little guys. You're talking about them exactly right.
I mean, that's part of the reason. Yeah.
And that is it.
I imagine the rarity is a first film thing where they just didn't make as many, and the film is smaller. There aren't as many. You don't see as many Mogwais in the film. You don't see as many Gremlins in the film. Are the first film Mogwais and Gremlins, or either or, more prone to decay and destruction over time because of the way they were built, or is it sort of...
Yeah, I wouldn't say so. I think, the first movie stuff is... Maybe it seems that way just because it's older, by about 5-6 years, right?
Yeah.
I was 7 years, I guess, because 84 to 91. And maybe they're making the stuff in 83. But, just that little bit of extra age probably is adding to some of that mystique. But for the most part, they're pretty tough. The thing that we see the most when it comes to... with the Mogwais, Dave hit it right on the head. They're a furry body. There's usually stuffing inside or some mechanics. Sometimes they've got a foam body shape, but usually that is holding up pretty well because it's covered for years and it's not exposed to sunlight. The air isn't hitting it the same way. And sometimes, things like putting a skin of glue on something and fur actually can seal the piece and help it hold up better over time. But for the most part, yeah, the places you start seeing damage on a Mogwai are around the mouth, around the eyelids, around the hands and the toes. And some of that is just literal damage. It's like these things are, they get brittle and then someone's handling them and doesn't realize it and, toe snaps off or whatever. But overall, I think the stuff is all aging about the same way. I don't think there was, the construction was very similar between both films, and the stuff is, I think it's just incredible how much of it is still around. This is the sort of stuff where, like, I mean, films like this could easily have just had everything dumped at the end,
Sure.
And there's like a handful that some of the guys who worked on it kept, and it's just all gone. Luckily for us, especially with the second movie, that Rick did those auctions and Rick had saved so much of it. But the first movie stuff, yeah, I wish I knew what happened to more of it. That one is, maybe that's a little more of what I was saying with a lot of it got tossed because there's many fewer pieces from that first film.
From the first film, sure. And that's what I was going to ask is just rolling back a little bit, just for in the mind of a collector for a moment. Don't expect you to have the real full figure in front of you, but number of Mogwais made for the first film, sort of, right. If you had to guess, number of Gremlins made for the first film, and then having helped with the Rick Baker auction, I'm actually sure you know those numbers probably even better. You could guesstimate Gremlins 2 even better. I wouldn't want to go on record with it because I don't have it in front of me, and I do know that for Gremlins 2, for each of the main sort of characters. Meaning the 4 or 5 different Mogwai and the 4 or 5 different main Gremlins, and then even beyond that, some of the ones like the vegetable Gremlin or the the bat Gremlin, things like that.
Most of the main ones had at least 5 variations of gremlin. Puppeteer from the bottom, marionette from the top, full mechanical stunt, etc. Most of them had 4 or 5 versions of Mogwai, and some of them even had the double size, well, not even double size, the giant sized, oversized one. Boy, I would hesitate to put numbers on this.
So that's like 25 Mogwai
and 25 gremlins just on the main, just on Lenny, George, Daffy, just on that stuff, and then from there you're talking just, probably 100 background gremlins. I would not be shocked if that's the number.
Yeah.
When you get into the spider gremlin, the bat gremlin, there's multiples of those. There's a stop motion spider gremlin.
The amazing thing on the background gremlins, at least on some of the ones that have shown up in auction, is the level of detail on those. I mean, they may only be waist up, or they may only be waist up with arms or something, but the level of detail seems as pretty good. The paint jobs seem as even though, I mean, again, I guess background is a relative term. Sometimes they were foreground. It was to crowd the screen in general, but the work on those is pretty wonderful. I mean, just across the board. Yeah, for
sure. And that paint job is Steve Wang, right? Like this is the guy who made the Predator and came up with that. He's sort of the father of the modern, camouflage skin paint job that really became the predominant thing in the 80s for creature work. And he was someone that Rick hired very early on. If I'm not mistaken, Matt Rose was on that show with him as well. And a ton of talented people. I don't want to miss anyone, so I'll stop listing just at those two. But I will say this. If anybody ever saw the props from the 2001 Planet of the Apes Tim Burton movie, if you ever saw a background ape mask from that, it's a slip rubber mask, so just like a Halloween mask, but the sculpt is beautiful, the paint is perfect, and the hair on it is hand punched one hair at a time. Wow. The sort of stuff no other film would ever do in the background, and that's Rick. Rick talks about how he got burned on a really early movie where I think it might have been Corman, it was probably Octoman, where Corman told him, oh, it's only going to be seen in the dark and you're only ever going to see this side of it or something like that. And, of course, immediately they start shooting it from the other side and in bright daylight. And that, I think, scarred him for life. And there was just like this never again moment. So, you go through anything that Cinovation worked on, Rick's shop, the most background of background thing is a hero piece for any other film.
The Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, what year was that, did you say? Was that 2001?
I think it's 2001.
The Tim Burton Planet of the Apes movie may be the most, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like
the reverse regression of the best props for the worst movie.
Yeah, and it's the one where people can't share a prop from that movie with you without going, I know the movie is terrible, but I just think the props are incredible.
Right.
Like, it's like that is the caveat of every piece I've ever seen from that movie. Like, it's built into it. Like, there could be a button on the costume or on the mask that just says
that.
I know the movie is bad, but look at the work here.
I want to see leading a sci-fi movie, Dave, about Planet Full of Apes. Mark Wahlberg.
I want to start like putting that as a sign on every piece that we do from that film. Just like I know
it's just funny. Everyone, you cannot.
We know.
I think even people that like it are embarrassed to say they like it. It's just funny, but yeah. So in terms of, let's jump back to the first movie, because again, I actually like both movies, but I guess I am slightly more fascinated by what has survived. So what have you seen, whether it's worked on or just in auction? What have you seen from the first movie? I know we saw a couple pieces. Did we see a couple pieces years ago at Bob Burns' house? He had a couple of things. Yeah.
Bob had one of the skeletons.
And did he have the cage, the original little
he had the
box
original
thing?
Yeah, he had one of those cages. He had the gizmo in the Barbie car.
That's right.
He had a scared Gizmo laying on the ground with a mechanism. he had a walking gizmo that was, if I remember right, meant to be seen from the back because the mechanism went into his belly.
Okay,
sort of like...
So it kind of pulled him along, so you were...
Yeah, or that, you would just, like you would see him from the back walking and you would not notice the mech going into him. Kind of like how Gort from Day the Earth Stood Still had a zipper in the front for one costume and a zipper in the back, for the other
one.
Yeah. The gremlin skeleton, a full gremlin he had, which may or may not have been one Chris did after. I'm not sure. I would have to ask him about that. But I believe he also had one of the stop motion gremlins. So there were like roughly 6-inch tall gremlins that were made for stop motion work. They did that for both films.
And those had just the full, forgive me, metal skeleton on the inside.
Yeah, usually on something like that, generally it would be a wire armature because they were not doing really high-end work with them. They were in the background. I don't know if there were ever any stop-motion gremlins done with like a proper armature ball and socket
like
thing,
not a full-on Phil Tippett armature. Okay.
Yeah. But it could have been. I mean,
and there were also a couple, if memory serves, were there a couple of like just almost like static ones that had no wire in them that like you could just like fill out a scene with, basically?
I'm
Again,
sure there were.
Background ones. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen some where the bodies are foam filled completely. So, nobody was putting an arm in there. And is that for carrying? Is that for tossing? Would that have been maybe rigged up for something else?
Just to draw the rats that might be on set?
Exactly. There was another type of puppet. I don't know if they used this on the first film. I know they did on the second film, and that would be what I would call like a string puppet. Not necessarily a marionette, but like a little, almost not quite spring-loaded, but like a small-scale puppet that I initially seeing it thought was a stop-motion puppet. But then in getting it, realized it had threads coming off of it that would have been used either to pull him down on something or to, pull an arm up. I guess technically it's a marionette. You're just pulling the string from a different than traditional direction.
But it's more background. It's like it's intended for like a simple action versus a full performance.
Yeah. And I've seen those, 6 inches tall, and then they also did full size where they're strung up. And there was one in particular that went through an auction and came to us that the auction house, for whatever reason, somebody cut all the strings from the controller, and they were just tied in knots and all. I'm like, it came to us. We had to untie everything, and then we had to retie it to longer strings to attach it back to it was just like, guys, what are you doing?
With the first film, we know the second film, it's no secret, the main source for all that stuff was the Rick Baker auction. That's where much of it came out. I'm sure there were other things that had come out at the time or were taken home as gifts or whatever were around. The first film, is there a central source, or is just kind of catch as catch can, like this escaped on this day? This was was there a sort of independent production company behind the movie? Because that's a Fox movie, right? Gremlins is Fox?
Now that you say it, I am not sure. I would say, for some reason, I had Warner in my head, but I know that's the second. The second one is definitely Warner Brothers.
Well, I guess the first one's Warner. Yeah, it must be Warner. It must be Warner.
It's very catch as catch can. I do know, Joe Dante had a few things and let those out over the years.
He told us he still has a bunch of the inventor. Forgive me, I forget his name, but the dad.
Oh yes, the
Peltzer
inventions.
Yeah, the Peltzer.
Yeah, he said he had a couple of
those
things. Yeah.
Which
I guess
a couple of those
he will not be selling anytime soon.
He doesn't need
those are friggin' amazing. Like, give me a bathroom buddy. Come on, like that's just.
He might now be bidding against Dave for the lightsaber.
He may be just buying.
Maybe he's got Rosebud.
Maybe he's just buying back Gremlins, just like.
But the very catch as catch can. I think if there was any big source, it probably Joe was the biggest individually. Anyway, I don't know what Chris had and how how things got out that way, or other guys on his crew who maybe were gifted stuff or whatever. But there's a fair amount of that stuff out there. It's but it's still. Man, I mean, we worked on.
It seems more rare, maybe just because of the sheer amount of stuff from the second movie.
I mean, we're at. I had Christine run the numbers before. I'm like, how many gremlins have we touched at this point? We're at 79 gremlins that we have either restored, conserved, prepped for auction, whatever.
Wow.
And that includes Mogwais and stop motion and full size and giant whatever.
But I mean, I can't think of seeing the thing that I would want.
But like we're talking
which
maybe
is
10 pieces from the first movie out of that.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say the thing that I would want, not to get ahead of the game or anything. I mean, this is probably everybody's answer. I would want a gizmo from the first film, and I can't think of ever seeing one in a public auction, at least that I follow or that I've seen, because that's something I don't know that I would have necessarily bid on.
I've only seen the one.
But and that was not an auction situation. That was sort of that's a private owner.
Time. I'm not sure what the original source on that was, but we did get that. I'm lucky to have known Chris Wayless for a while. Through the early Gremlin stuff, I was reaching out to him for some advice and talking about how he made the stuff, and luckily he responded, and we got to know each other a bit. And now he's doing signatures and sketches with us on our Regal Robot stuff. But, he was able to verify that gizmo at the time, if I'm remembering correctly. And we've done that from time to time, too, where it's just like, does this seem right? Because, I guess
that was a question which was not getting into, obviously, there are certain things from the second movie where you just go, clearly this is the second movie because it's a very specific thing from the second movie.
Yeah, they didn't have that character in the first movie.
But in terms of, like, I guess in terms of, like, a gizmo, in terms of, like, a classic gremlin, if you will.
First movie gremlin, yeah.
Can you identify, like, when you look at them, I assume there are key differences between first movie construction and second movie construction?
Yeah. The sculpt on the first movie gremlin is night and day different from the second.
Okay.
The second is an incredible sculpt, and it is clearly the same creature, but it's just like the HD version of it. It's super refined. The textures were all tighter. Everything about it is less loose, for lack of a better word. I'm sure a lot of that is down to, one, Chris's particular design sensibility, and two, the time frame and the budget. Because Tony can absolutely sculpt tight like that. But in this case, he pushed in a slightly different direction. My guess is that's probably time and Chris saying, no, rougher, like this. But the first movie Gremlins have just a different attitude about them. And if people want, they can go to our site and they can find a Gremlins 1 Gremlin and Gremlins 2 Gremlin and just put them side by side. Maybe Bart can put one together, and through the magic of podcasting, we can see them side by side. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like, oh, these are so completely different. And the paint jobs in particular, that Steve Wang designed paint job for the second film is so much more refined. There's so much more detail in the black lining and things like that. And then that really just isn't there in the first.
And what about when it comes to Gizmo? Are the differences the same between the two movies?
Yeah.
Same kind of differences, I guess, the paint
very
job and
similar.
whatnot.
Yeah, he's not as rough as the Gremlin sculpted. And rough, I'm using in it's not a pejorative. But the first movie Gizmo has, for lack of a better word, more ins and outs. His eyes are they protrude a little differently, and the rest of the face recedes a little bit, especially once you start seeing them under the fur and what things look like. The ears have a little bit of a different shape to them. The ears are maybe a little smaller in the first movie. His mouth shape's a little different. His eyes are a little cruder. When you look at the second movie Mogwais, they're slightly bigger and they are super refined. I mean, really, really sharp. And again, if you were to put two of them side by side,
you see the difference.
It becomes really, really apparent.
Beyond the paint job and, as you said, different sculpts a little bit and different sizes, is it different? Were they using different materials as well on the first movie, or is it all kind of made the same? Just different sculpts?
Almost exactly the same.
So material-wise, that wouldn't be a telltale sign to you. Much more of looking at it. I'm just
There's a little bit here and there. There's certain pieces that in the second movie have a particular type of skinning with slip latex with poly underneath them, or they're self-skinning polyfoam in some instances and things like that. Honestly, that's the sort of stuff that you almost can't tell from the outside looking in, and really you'd have to be in the process of conserving or restoring the piece to even tell. But the sculpts are so different that you wouldn't even get to that.
Right, you would need to.
But
right.
even still, these could be made of the exact same materials, and they'd still look dramatically different because of the sculpts, the type of paint, the finish work, the level of finish work, that kind of thing.
Well, do you have any sense as to why? I mean, I'm at the direct. The director was the same, but do you have any sense why we went from Chris Walas to Rick Baker in the second? Was it simply like, we need a much bigger shop, we're going to make 250 Gremlins, we need a factory line?
That's a good question that I would, myself go and ask Ian or talk to Rick and Chris. My guess is that it probably was down to the scale of it. I also wonder if the timing of it didn't, maybe cross with
something else.
Either, like The Fly 2 or something like that that Chris was doing, where, he had a different, path in mind or a different commitment. Certainly, though, CWI was Chris's shop. They had done, Enemy Mine was a pretty big show.
Yeah.
But boy, Gremlins 2, I mean, I don't know that there's anything that really hits that level. Well, honestly, the Tim Burton Apes comes close. Grinch comes close with the amount of. I mean, Grinch may have even surpassed it. The clump stuff,
just because of all the Who faces.
Yeah, all the Who faces,
them,
all of that stuff. But in terms of just sheer mass and of full elements. Puppets, full body things, all of that stuff, not just appliances. Boy, I don't know that there's ever been anything like Gremlins out there, like Gremlins 2 rather. It's got to be one of the biggest makeup shows that's ever been done, and sheer volume of creatures. It's got to be way up there.
Do you have a personal of all the different types of puppets, and whether we're talking about an under puppet, a marionette? Yeah. A figure that isn't a puppet, one of the, just all the various ones. Do you have a personal favorite that you sort of like? I guess obviously you are a conservator. You do work on these things. You are a puppeteer yourself. But I guess the collector in you. Do you have a favorite version as a collector? Yeah.
I mean, I gravitate towards like mid-range, for lack of a better word. Sometimes the hero ones have thinner skins and maybe they've had to have more work done on them and things like that, where you get a good mid-range puppet that's mostly either a self-skinning polyfoam or a latex with poly backing that, has maybe held up better because of those materials. And so it's just a little more original the whole way through. That's where I gravitate. And for me, it would be a first movie Gremlin. Or, like Ryan said before, our first movie, Gizmo, Mogwai. Both of those would knock my socks off. Honestly, they had, in the Planet Hollywood auction, they had some ones that Chris had made after the film.
Right.
And I think initially Planet Hollywood had them listed, or had them documented in their books as screen used. And I actually talked with Chris about them, and he pointed out, no, we made those for Planet Hollywood. They're actually made of resin. They're not even foam. But they were finished the same way and all of this stuff, and they were out of the original molds. And, Heritage, brought to you by Heritage, immediately updated the listing in there. And those were ones I was watching really closely, because had they not gone completely insane, which they did in those auctions, I would have loved to have had those there, because they were just really good examples of those beautiful sculpts.
They were representative, but
and they were his work, guy,
and
and it had that Chris connection, and they're also resin, so they're going to hold up in a different way. Those were super attractive to me, and I was kind of bummed I missed out on them.
So does that mean that you didn't take anything home from the Rick Baker auction? So you don't have your own Gremlins piece in the Spina Museum?
No, I don't. But I do have a few pieces from the Baker stuff that I'm pretty happy with, and in particular a few pieces that Rick gave me, which have a little extra meaning because of that too.
Sure.
So
yeah.
But yeah, I did not pursue a Gremlin. I kick myself for not being more of a player in that auction. looking back at it, if anybody ever goes through that, I think it was 2014 or 2015.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
If you go through that catalog and you look at some of the prices realized for some of that Harry and the Henderson stuff especially, and there was some gorilla stuff, all this ape stuff, the stuff from Greystoke and all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, just for makeup history, not even for the films necessarily. There's just some amazing stuff that was in there, and it all went so cheap compared to what you would expect. Men in Black stuff too.
But
oh my
considering the sheer amount
yeah.
of Gremlins that they had, I don't remember those as going. Maybe now they seem cheap, but the Gremlins all did heady numbers even then.
Big numbers for the time.
Maybe,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Like now
I
they
remember
may
a lot of them being in
seem
this,
like
like-
bargains, but at
Yeah.
the time it was like they certainly weren't giving them away, considering how many
Right.
there were. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the good Gremlins going for like $5 or $7 grand, or maybe 6 to 8 or something like that at the time over most auctions, not just that one. And yeah, at the time maybe that did seem like a lot, but now when you see some of these things going 60, 70 grand a Gremlin, you just go, okay, like, boy, where's my time machine? When is my time machine?
Now a fake Stormbreaker costs more than that.
That's true. Well, it's only $20 if you go to Etsy.
Tom, this was fantastic. Are we leaving anything out? Is there anything left on the Gremlins floor that we should cover before we play
what?
the game?
I'm gonna bring in one more Gremlin story because this one was really special.
Great.
So like I said, we've done a ton of these, right? And the majority of them are what we call reheadings.
Because
for the most
they
part,
crack at the neck, is that why?
yeah. So for the most part, what happens is people take a puppet and they put it on a stick, and all the weight is on the head, and the body just pulls on it, and the head comes off. And from the first one we worked on to the last, we have reheaded dozens and dozens of these things. But we had someone email us to tell us like the head's coming off her Gremlin, and so we're like, okay, this is, Christine calls it the oil change of the prop world for us. It's like, don't worry, we got this. And we do a custom insert in the body that takes all the weight off of the body, supports that so that the head is held on its own and that the neck has no stress on it. And we support the arm so that doesn't pull on the shoulders. All like I said, this is the oil change. We know what we're doing. Okay, get it in, let's do it. And we look, and Christine comes up to me and she says, do you know someone named Lainey Miller? She's talking like she knows us or something. And I'm like, I don't, but I have an idea. And it was actually Dick Miller's wife. He had passed away at that point, and he's like Joe Dante's good luck charm. He's in all of his movies.
All the movies, yeah.
He's I love him in oh gosh, is he the guy in Terminator in the gun shop too? Now that I'm thinking about it? Yeah, that's him. He's in the bookstore in The Howling. He's in Gremlins, Mr. Futterman. Anyway,
60-watt phased plasma rifle. Only what you see, pal.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna close early. So it turns out, he had recently passed away. This was his wife, and she had what she had named Gremmy. And so she said, can you help Gremmy for me? And so we did. And so she sent us Gremmy, and we worked on it. We sent it back, and she sent us this lovely note later that, this was this thing that meant so much to her, and it was part of his, her husband's history in film. And that one, out of all of them, was probably the most special.
Nice.
Forget hero, forget background, forget marionette, any of the controls. This one had a story. This one had a personal connection to, somebody that meant a lot to really anybody that knows film, never mind, if you're a fan of these movies.
Yeah, classic character actor. Great. So, should we play the game?
Yeah.
I feel like we
So-
got ahead of it a little bit.
What piece from Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes 2001 would you like? You can have anything in the world. Just
Who goes
remember.
first?
I want the script.
I don't remember.
to rewrite it?
I don't remember. I mean, I feel like, is it Paul Giamatti is sort of Zeus in that movie or something?
He's kind of he's
Zeus-esque. I'll take a Paul
yeah,
I'll take a Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti or a Michael Clark Duncan. That's
I
kind
feel
of
like
this
that's
is
a
a little
Gremlins
I
game.
remember.
Should we play Gremlins?
I feel like you're
Fine,
just...
fine.
Oh, okay. I feel like I'll have a Paul Giamatti sounds like something you get at a bar,
Yeah.
like a speakeasy downtown. It's like, I'll take a Paul Giamatti and a side of Michael Clark Duncan.
Okay, so but the rule is you can't have a first film gizmo because I think that's the easy sort of low hanging fruit,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But what about you? I mean, Tom, you've handled all these. If you approached it and
There are
putting
people,
aside
by the way-
the special one.
I was just gonna say there are people that love some of like in the second movie like specific characters. Like Rob Klein loves Daffy, so he has
Well,
like
that's
he
what
like yeah. He really loves Daffy. Anyway,
like I was curious if Tom if there was a work of art like something that the Spider Gremlin or something that was just such an achievement in creature effects that provided you didn't we could hire a team to get it inside of your house. And you
Right,
wouldn't
yeah.
have to,
Can I get
you wouldn't
Rich
have to
Riley
even
down
watch
here to
them
break
do
the
it.
wall so that I
we
can
actually
fit it
have a
in the
special
place?
package for sale where we send
Right.
you and your wife out for a long weekend. You don't even have to watch them bring it in your house. When you come back, it's just done, and you don't
It's
know
just
how they did
there,
it. Yeah.
taking up the entire living room, and us going, boy, I thought this was a bigger space. I'll tell you what, I mean, as silly as it sounds, the Peltzer bathroom buddy is probably like, if I'm gonna, it sound, maybe I am jaded, right? Like maybe after 79 Gremlins and Mogwai coming through the shop.
yeah.
All right,
Fuck
kid.
the Gremlins. Fuck those stupid Gremlins.
No, but like that was one of those things like that's a pretty recognizable piece. It's a great gag in the movie. And
I think I might know where that is.
Yeah. And I think I might as well. And so
well, I think if you can offer Joe Dante $13 million, I'm guessing it's yours. I don't know the price, but that would be where I think where you'd
that's
have
probably
to
the
Start
point.
there. Yeah.
Because it's like, obviously, Citizen Kane, I sold that thing for $12 million. This is better.
This is better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, is there one that jumps out at you that you would like to have? I mean, I do feel like at this point, it is one of those strange things where I think we have 15 years of collecting history where we have not ever bid on a Gremlin. Have you ever come close? Have you ever like almost bid? I mean, even back
this is
on
so stupid
even
of
back
me.
in the big auction, I looked at them all and I went, they're all kind of okay, but I always like the second one. I always like the second one, the comedy of the second one more than the first one, which legitimately scared me. And I don't like scary movies.
Yeah, and it's meta,
but I did think the first one, they were cooler. I thought like the Gremlins from the first one were cooler.
The first one's actually terrifying.
Yeah, right. The second movie I thought was sillier. And somewhere in there, I did nothing. Many times, like a long.
Dave was actually holding out for a Mowgli, and just one never came along.
Eventually, maybe he'll sell me one.
No, for me, I think I just go to, because I love Gremlins 2, and I was too young to have seen Gremlins 1 in the theater, so I saw it at home. I saw it on video, but it kind of freaked me out. My grandmother my dad's mom worked for Matchbox. A million years ago. So she would always have these cool toy samples and whatever. And I don't know whether this was a Matchbox toy or they got the license or whatever. And Tom, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but there was a toy company in the mid 80s that made an incredibly lifelike Gremlin.
Yeah.
It was timely with the movie. It was not a
LJN.
Gremlins 2 thing. I'm sorry,
it was LJN.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she got access to all this stuff, and I think this kind of came through her because I don't know why else we would have had it in our house. And I just remember I saw it as probably, I don't know, 6-year-old or whatever before I saw the movie, and the thing was like haunted me. And I knew it was in the attic, and like I didn't want to go up in the attic because it was up there. So I've always had this sort of weird Gremlin relationship. So for me, seeing Gremlins 2 in the theater demystified the whole thing because it was such great fun, and I just really enjoyed it. And I always found that one easier to watch because I had this childhood. It wasn't even based on the movie. It was based on the stupid toy. But I always had this weird experience watching the first movie.
The power of Chris's design on that first one.
Because of that
even as a toy, even just in your attic, you knew that thing was evil and gonna get you.
But I always in the second movie, I always really liked the Gizmo Rambo gag with the bow and arrow and the thing.
They pushed him too far.
I just thought that was so great, and that was such an emblem. The over masculinated 1980s and the stupid bow and arrow that all the heroes had, and of course Rambo was the first one. I got that and then Charlie Sheen did it in Hot Shots.
Like the white out on the end of it to be the combustible.
Yeah, exactly. So I got that gag as a as an 11-year-old or whatever when I saw it in the movie, and I just really appreciate it. So I think that's where I would go. And
I thought you were going to
one of those came around and I saw it and I was thinking about it. But to answer your question, Dave, I kick myself to this day because there was an opportunity at one point when all of the original Mogwai came in. There was a bunch of Mogwai that like flushed in. I think this was before the auction, and they were being offered out privately, sort of publicly but privately. It was sort of if you knew you were on the offer list, and I got offered a really great gizmo, and it was like 10 grand. And this is going back. This is 10 grand.
When 10 grand was a giant, the most anyone would ever spend.
And it was on my car. That was a big thing for me, and I was like, 3 plates were spinning. I was like, God, I should really get one. I don't think it's ever going to be cheaper than this. And here we are. I'm sure the next great Mogwai that goes to auction is going to break 6 figures or something like that. It's not about the value or the price. It's just that was the moment.
That was the opportunity.
I should have just taken it and figured it out. So there's my belabored answer.
I thought you were going to say, this is neither here nor there, I thought you were going to pick the what the hell do they call it? The Bat Gremlin. I thought you were going to pick that because they do kind of the Batman.
It is.
There were 2 of them.
Yeah.
Actually, there's 3 of those. There was a stop motion,
in front of the moon,
one puppeteered from the bottom, and one from
the
the top.
They do the sort of the moon gag, and
And I love, when he turns into the gargoyle and solidifies, it's so good.
Yes, but as you know, I'm terrified of gremlins, so I want a sweet Mogwai in my house. Not
all right.
Not a gremlin.
He wants a Muppet.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
I do have to say, and again, I know we sort of said no, like first movie ones, but I always loved whatever that thing that,
you can have a first movie creature,
right.
just not a
no,
gizmo.
I get it. But I was going to say,
the flasher from the first movie.
I love the cage. I love that thing that Bob Burns had, which I don't. I guess I don't think you even can see the Mogwai, or maybe he's in there, or there's an arm or something. I can't quite remember.
I think
it's not
Bob
real.
might actually have one in there.
I don't know if it's a full puppet, but I
pitch.
always loved sort of that like the cage where you're not seeing the full Mogwai.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was very fun and whatnot. I get a real kick out of the skeletons, again, to talk about a Bob Burns thing. Like when they're I guess I love the notion of they're dead, so they can't hurt you anymore, but you get the full like a dinosaur, like in a museum kind of a thing.
Yeah, and it's like it's almost like the skeletons that are in Target nowadays. Like there's way more detail than there's supposed to be on it. Right. Like that wouldn't have that, But it's like instantly recognizable, even as a skeleton.
Yes, even as a skeleton, the shape was very like, oh, I know what that is. Anyway.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe that.
Totally.
But like I said, I do feel like this. This is one of those funny ones because it's like, as you said, you've seen 79 of them, which my guess means more than 79 have come to auction, and Ryan and I have very clearly not bid on any of them. So at some point,
maybe your mind was made up.
At some point, I guess we're probably not getting one. Yeah.
In my defense, I was busy not bidding on an Edith Head drawing at the time.
Right. I was busy not bidding on Prometheus stuff, but anyway. Anyway, I like I said, I do like it. I just never quite pulled the trigger, and at this point, it just seems. It doesn't seem like it's worth pretending like I'm going to.
Yeah, I watched a few, and there were a few points where I threw some bids, or was in particular like those Planet Hollywood ones I was talking about. But yeah, never really pushed
quite
beyond
made it
that.
work. Yeah, I get it. Cool.
This is amazing. Tom, where can people find you?
They can find TomSpinaDesigns.com, RegalRobot.com, and at TomSpinaDesigns at RegalRobot on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff.
Great.
And or they can find us at the Lucasfilm Archives scanning stuff for all our Regal Robot stuff. Sorry, Ryan. Sorry. Oh no.
Shut up, Tom. Now you're off the podcast.
Dave, you can pay
no,
me
I did
later
see
for that.
you guys have a bunch of cool new kind of indie stuff coming on down the line.
Yeah.
Which I saw you kind of teased at Comic-Con. So very exciting.
we've been hard at work for many months prepping all that stuff we were going to reveal at Comic-Con. If people go to regalrobot.com, go to the news page, there's the San Diego reveals blog post. We put up 19 new items.
Oh my God.
5 of which are indie pieces.
So when you show off 19 new items, you're sort of going, these are the items for the next 2 years, kind of? I mean, that's
for us, that's through about like February.
Oh my God. So 19 items between now and then? Wow, that seems like a lot.
Yeah, we've got a really full thing. But the cool thing, I mean, look, maybe this is another episode we can talk the hats of Indiana Jones part 2 for you guys or something, but the biggest one for us is we are doing a replica of the Raiders hat, and there was a Raiders hat that was lost for years in the archives, but just unlabeled in a box, that Brandon Allinger actually had a lead on years ago from doing his costume book, was like, there's a hat, it's in a box with a couple other hats, I'm pretty sure it's a Raiders if you can find it. And we were lucky that one of the women working with us on research there is a hunter, and we would tell her we're looking for things, and she would scour the shelves and the the bowels of the archives.
It probably helped that they've been moving stuff down for the museum, so maybe as they are actually
definitely a
clearing
lot
things out, that maybe you actually go, oh my God, here's this box. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had stuff on wish lists for years. We found old photos, Polaroids and regular photos taken when they did the initial move to the ranch. And so we saw like crates that they would take a picture of the crate, and we'd see things, just barely obscured in piles under other stuff. And we're like, you guys probably have this somewhere, and it's like, or like, oh, we know 2 other things from this crate exist. So maybe these other ones are still here.
The third one should be here somewhere.
And just as recently as the last trip we were there, they found a few pieces that were just like that. But one of the things they turned up was a hat from Raiders.
Amazing.
And man, what an experience to pull that out of a box.
It's probably
for the, first time
the
in
other
decades.
hat. I mean, I think they think there's only 2, the people that have researched the film, at least screen matched hats. There's the one that kind of sold through auction, which is in basically 85%. 85% of the film.
This one, to me, and Brandon and I really looked at it pretty close after the fact, and when we got all our photos and stuff. You're basically working with the ribbon when you're talking about this kind of matching, and it matches. For the most part, we believe, I'm not going to, I won't say anything super definitive, but I believe it matches some of the temple scenes. In particular, there's some behind-the-scenes photos of, like, Indy pulling Satipo up out of the hole and stuff like that. And I think that those are the closest matches I've seen. There's a couple of shots out in Hawaii, out and about, where I think the ribbon looks to match as well. My guess is, this is purely a guess. I think there's at least 3 hats, because I think Streets of Cairo is obviously an easy match. It's such a unique hat, and there's so many tells on that, and Desi did such a great job, mapping out where that is in the film. I believe this hat that we found matches a handful of other shots. I think that still leaves room for a 3rd hat somewhere, but who knows? Maybe it was reused as a stunt.
The Harrison Ford hat.
Maybe Harrison. Yeah, who the heck knows? But that was one of the coolest pieces that we got to announce, is that we are doing a replica of that hat, real felt, sweatband liner, all the same stuff that matches that hat in the archives, and really is giving people a pretty unique thing that you're not going to get elsewhere. And for us, it's just the extension of like a really freaking cool story to have opened a box and pull out, this Raiders hat that just hasn't been seen in decades, and
it's very cool. Indiana Jones.
And go like, oh my God,
a story in itself.
This is our life. Like we are lucky nerds.
It's the best.
So check that out at regalrobot.com. You'll be able to get it there. I assume there'll be like it will be limited.
Pre-orders?
It will be signed or some version of something.
It'll be
or other.
limited for sure. Yeah, we'll probably do like a timed edition on that one. There's some other great stuff. We're doing the Real Eyes Idol. We're doing the Leap of Faith painting. The Totes hanger. Actually, hold on. This guy.
Wait, bring that back. That's cool.
Okay. So yeah, this is one of our prototypes on
Do
it.
they have that in the archives? Do they actually have the
They
hanger?
do not.
Oh.
That's actually in a private collection. We did get to see some unseen photos of it and be able to work backwards from that on our
The
replica.
mechanism, so to speak. Okay.
It's such a great moment in that movie.
Right.
And like Belloc's face after, to me, is I think what sells it. His roll of the eyes, like, are you serious? You know, like it's just the seriousness that Tote does it is great. He plays it so straight, and then just for Belloc to be like, oh come on, you know, love it.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone. Keep following us on @PropsPodcast. Check out our YouTube channel if you want to see some of the pictures of the things we were talking about. And email us at
dreamsaremadeofpodcasts@gmail.com.
talk to you soon.